Hi there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Cloud-Based Mayhem. This show was originally recorded as a bonus episode. Alejandro Barañac reached out quite a while back and said, hey, I've been listening to the show and I've got a story of my own, but it's just about an accident. It's about making a mistake, trying not to be inconvenienced, and something many of us have done, trying to land at a train station and putting it into a small place. Nick Grease has talked a lot about the dangers of trying not to be inconvenienced, and he was racing in the Vercofly for the first time, doing a hike and fly race in the Alps in the Vallis. We've talked a lot about the Vercofly on the podcast, and it was a year that there was quite a few other accidents that year. This was 2 years back, I believe, and they actually ended up canceling the race because there were so many. But this is a talk with Alejandro. It's a short one, just about what went wrong and some of the takeaways and what he learned from it. And he also sent me a little email afterwards that said that one of the things we didn't talk about was the importance of talking to somebody, talking to an expert about your accident. And he feels strongly that this was one of the reasons he didn't have a fear injury after it. So in the end, it all came out okay. He had a lot of injuries that he's had to and still dealing with, but a good lesson here. So have a listen to Alejandro's story about participating in the Vercofly and a day that went a little sideways. Enjoy. Alejandro, welcome to the Mayhem. I understand you're busy with a couple little ones, and you're living right where the Vercofly starts. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I've been living here since 3 years, and it's been a few more since I moved to Switzerland.
And you're from Spain?
Yeah, correct.
What part?
Catalonia.
Ah.
I grew up at the seaside, but my mom comes from a village in the Pyrenees where paragliding started in Spain. So I did spend all my holidays there, and I've seen people flying since I was, 2 or 3 years old.
How long you been flying?
So officially, I think it's been 11 or 12 years.
Okay.
But the first 5 years, I don't really count them because I did do my instruction. But then I was a student. I didn't have money for gear, so I was flying only in summer when I was renting some gear from my instructor. And I think I checked, and there were 2 or 3 years where I did 2 or 3 flights per year.
And was that in the Pyrenees?
Yeah, that was in the Pyrenees. There were guided flights, although I had finished my instruction or my training. But I really do count flying when I got my own gear and I started flying on my own, which was 2015, so 8 years ago.
And was the impetus to move to Switzerland because of flying or work?
No, it was more work. I was finishing my master's in engineering, and I had to do my master thesis in a company. And I found a research institute that accepted me near Geneva, and I moved there. And I mean, yeah, that's the Alps are really close by. There are some other smaller mountains. I don't know, maybe 10 minutes from where I was living. So that was a big plus for me, because although I grew up at the seaside, I've always been more of a mountain person. And yeah, that was a big plus. And then where I was doing my master thesis, a couple of years later, I continued working there. I met my wife, who she's from Austria, and she's very much into skiing. And yeah, we then decided to stay in the area. I found later on a job in Valais or Valais. I don't know what word you use in English.
Valais.
And when I came here to the area for the interview, I was like, wow, yeah, this place is good. I saw the high peaks with the snow and so on, although it was September. So yeah, I was straight away hooked on. And then moving to Vercofly, which is a village with a paragliding school and so on, was also not so much my idea. We were living down in the valley in the capital, although it's a small town, it's 30,000 people. And we wanted to move to a quieter place. And my wife really pushed a bit for Vercofly because, among other things, it has a a gondola that takes you from down in the valley up, so you don't depend so much in the car. And yeah, we ended up getting an apartment here, and we're really really happy.
I've got this fantasy that I'm going to move the family over to the Alps after I get this house built done. We'll hopefully move in July, and not permanently. I think this is where we're going to live, but I'd love to come over for. I used to do a lot of tooling around before I had Fallon. I had the Nivea mobile. I had this motorhome and Heimer, and I spent a lot of years and years with Bruce. In the Alps. Uh,
Hmm.
Getting to know it, and then of course with the X Alps and stuff. But I'd love to come back and just spend an entire summer. And it's good to hear that you've transplanted yourself from another country and it's all working out. Because do you speak German?
No, yes, but not super fluently. I can go to Germany or Austria and yeah, manage myself without needing someone to translate. But where I'm living, it's still with they speak French,
Mm.
and
Yeah, you're
I
on the
do
French
speak
side.
French, and that's fine. Yeah, but the German part is really really close by. Um, but I don't. I think I would say it's a bit different for Austria, but in Switzerland, unless you go to a very remote place, all the German speakers speak quite good English, so
Yeah, it's pretty
you
easy,
can get
isn't it?
around easily. Mm.
Yeah, it's also civilized in the Alps. I love it. It's so fantastic. Okay, so what's your hike and fly background? Because we're going to be talking about the Vercofly and the
Yeah.
unfortunate incident. Was that last year?
No, that was almost 2 years
2 years
ago,
ago,
two editions ago. Yeah.
the one that Nick, the one they canceled.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll
Exactly.
talk about the weather and why they did that and what was going on. I mean, I know there was a bunch of accidents, but what's your hike and fly history?
So while learning how to paraglide, nothing. I learned with heavy gear, the traditional way. Where I learned in the Pyrenees, it's you go with the. It's not like the Alps, so you have to take the minivan up on not a great road. I don't know how they continue getting companies to rent them minivans to those schools in summertime because they just destroy them. Um, and then when I had to buy my gear, I wanted it to have like a reversible harness. I didn't want to carry those massive backpacks which are not so comfortable. They have changed a lot, but like 10 years ago they were like, yeah, just
Mm,
for 10-minute walks or so they were okay, but otherwise it was horrible. But it was a heavy, it was, yeah, on today's standards it was a heavy kit. I think I was carrying 15 kilos around. And where I was living next to Geneva in Switzerland, there's some small mountains called the Jura Mountains. And I had maybe 800 meters of denivellation from the parking spot to the top of the mountain. And
that's pretty
that's how I
stiff.
started my. Yeah, but I was a bit younger, I was stronger. And that's how I started. Might have been a bit not the most. I would not recommend the same way to start for someone that had my experience back in the day, because yeah, it's the takeoff is not the easiest. Wind is always a bit cross there, but yeah, that's how I started. We didn't have so much access nearby to where I was living to chairlifts or some sort of lift. And yeah, and I was always sort of attracted. I think it was around that time when I started following the X apps.
Mm,
So I'm talking about 2015.
hmm.
So there was not that much hike and fly back then, as at least it was not that what's the word, um, yeah, trendy, or
Yeah, there
ninety
wasn't a
percent of
race every
pilots
weekend.
were. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Um,
COVID really
and
kicked
then
that off, didn't it? I mean, it was interesting to watch what happened, at least in Europe, way more than it did here. But the lockdowns and the closing of the resorts just put everybody on their feet. It closed down the gondolas and the chairs, and everybody had to hike to get some, and so they did. It was, and I just man, it's taken off. It's pretty
yeah,
cool.
it's true. I never thought about it, but I know that it did the same thing with ski touring. A
Yeah,
lot of people got into ski touring because of COVID,
yeah.
and yeah, yeah, probably also on with paragliding. And around that time, a friend of mine who's become a really, really good friend, who was working the same company as I was, he got into flying. He's German, did his training in Germany. He took some week or 2 weeks off, did the training there, and then came back. And he's extremely fit. He's a biker. He really, really is fit. And we started doing hike and fly together. And yeah, then it continued. And I basically, I have two kits for flying, like what I call my heavy kit, which is not heavy, but it's more like a hike and fly or cross. And then the light one, which is used to be a single skin wing with a really minimalistic harness and a front container. But with the, yeah, um, air quotes, heavy kit, I do, yeah, sometimes I take the lift because where I'm living, there's a tiny ski resort and there's a lift that can take you up the mountain, or I go hiking. And yeah, I really like that feeling that you can go a bit wherever you want and taking off
And
from
had
there.
you done other hike and fly races or events before the Vercofly 2 years ago?
No, I had been a supporter for this friend of mine, Jochen, at the Born to Fly in Annecy
Mm-hmm.
the previous year. I did hike a bit with him to takeoffs and so on, but not as a race, no.
And I had the Vercofly founder on the show quite a
Yeah,
while back, so people that have listened to that know. But just refresh us on how the Vercofly works, because it's a really cool race. It's unsupported.
yeah, exactly. It's unsupported because it's taking place in this area of the Alps where we have so many huts.
Yep.
So there are two categories, like the pro and the adventure category. The pro is obviously for pros or really good pilots. They don't take anyone. You have to be accepted. In that one, there's a rank at the end of the race, and they get points depending on the number of flights they do per day and how big they are. It's a bit complicated to understand the ranking system. And when you follow it live, you have no idea who's first and who's
Yeah.
second. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's more for the pilots than for the people at home. And then for the adventure category, there's a series of tasks to do, but there's no ranking. So no one will, you could lie if you want, but it's about having a good time. And
Mm.
the goal is to tick as many huts as you can from a list they give you, and then pass through some places. Like if you go to the top of this mountain hiking or even flying, you get a bonus point. If you swim into this mountain lake, you get some more points.
Mm.
If you have an omelette in this hut lost in the forest, you get also some points. So yeah, the goal is to have fun.
Mm. That sounds just
And
amazing. It's what a
it
good
is,
time. Wow, very
and
cool.
it's the fact that it's unsupported. It's great for people that, I mean, yeah, having someone that will say, okay, yeah, I will follow you during 3 days, and I don't care if the weather's good. I will do whatever you tell me. I'll cook for you. We'll sleep in a van. I'll cheer you up when you're down, and I'll. Uh, it's not that easy for everyone, especially if you come. I mean, if it's next door, yeah, you'll find probably a friend that's able to do that. But I mean, to the Vercofly, we've had people coming all the way from Norway, so I can imagine that it's not easy for someone like that to find a supporter. So the concept's really good, and I think they even should try to sell it a bit more from the environmentally friendly point of view, because it's a bunch
Mm.
of cars that are not running around
Mm.
following the pilots.
Yeah, that's true. Hans is always talking about, wouldn't it be cool to have the no bull Red Bull X Alps? The just no rules, no supporters, just you in the mountains and going for it. And that would be tough as a 12-day race for sure, but it would be pretty interesting, because every edition gets a little bit more strict in a sense because of the airspace and the parks, and there's a lot to it, but a huge component both expense wise and also just logistics wise is your team. Of course, it's critical, and it's nice to be able to just go race. I was laughing with Ben, my supporter, all four of the races last year, because he's done all my training, or sorry, last night, because he's done all my training. We were talking about this race that I host called the X Red Rocks here in the fall, and in all the races I've done, I've totally had to rely on my team for pretty much everything other than flying. And the cooking and the mapping and the navigation. I mean, I land and within 4 minutes I've got a route to the next spot. And so to do a bunch of these without them is going to be great because it's going to force me to figure all that stuff out. I've always just relied on them for everything. And so I like these self-supported ones that are great. And it's 4 days, right? The Vercofly.
Yeah, 4 days. Yeah.
Okay, so this one unusually for that time of year had quite strong weather. Is that correct? I saw a lot of posts
Um,
about it.
yeah, I wouldn't call it like that. Just let me go back for a second.
Sure.
This was my second edition of the Vercofly. I had
Ah, okay.
participated the previous year.
Okay. In the
Yeah.
adventure category. Both.
Yeah.
Okay.
Both,
Yep.
both, both. I don't have the physical or the flying level for the pro category.
Okay.
Um, yeah. So looking, I have a little bit of a video because I had a shitty GoPro, which, the battery turned off in the middle of my only flight that year. But it was not that strong. I do remember talking with Laurent Borella, the organizer, on the phone from hospital on the day after, and he told me that it was strange. There was something strange in the air. He could not say exactly what it was. I mean, it was thermic. It was August. So it was sunny, and yeah, people were going up easily. But the previous year had been much stronger. The first day we had crazy west wind, and you could see people flying up to 4,000 meters and more, sometimes only soaring on the mountain. It was not that strong, but it was simply, there was something different, strange. I don't know exactly what it was, but I do know that was not the cause for my accident.
Okay, so take us through it.
Yeah, okay. So the race starts at the top of the ski resort. There's a nice restaurant there. You do all the checkups, you sign whatever you have to sign, and then they do a countdown and you start hiking, or you can take off if you want because there's a takeoff there. And my wife came to see the takeoff because we, at that time, she was with my son who was only 6 months old. And I remember telling her, yeah, the goal is to have fun and to, in 4 days, get back home in one piece. And because I wanted to take it easier than the previous year. Previous year, I had been a bit stressed during the race, and so I wanted to do well. And this year, I just wanted to have fun. So most of the participants just start hiking up towards a ridge that's just, let's say, direction south. And you get to a small mountain, like, which takes about 45 minutes hiking. That's the first of the bonus points for the adventure category. You send a selfie of yourself to the organizers, and yeah, you're supposed to have that bonus. And then 10 minutes after that, there's a nice place for taking off, where I have taken off plenty of times. I prepared myself, but I could see that I was a bit in a rush, but I thought it was still fine. I took off. It was a bit windy, as it is usually there at around that time of the day, but it was a good takeoff. And then I sort of I thermaled a bit, and then I ridge soared, following some other pilots, and in the direction of the first hut that you have to tick either on the ground or on the air for the adventure category. The pros have to land. And I ticked it, was happy, and I was direction the next one. And if you want, I can read to you my note that I wrote to myself 2 years ago after the accident. First flight of the Vercofly, good takeoff, flew well over Bec de Bosson, which is the first hut, and went direction Praflerie, which is another hut. Didn't have enough altitude to cross the valley, so I decided to land next to the chairlift of Evelyn. Here I must say that at the adventure category, they allow you to take public transport and chairlift or gondolas if there are. I must have been in the rotor because on final approach, I had a lot of speed, got sudden lift, and crashed against two cars in the car park. Broken left femur, surgery, broken left collarbone, T11, so the vertebra was also cracked, and compressed right ankle. Shit. So yeah, to explain, to give a bit more of context, I was crossing the valley and I took a bad line. I saw other pilots doing well, and the the very good ones far away in the distance. I could see them that they were high. I took a bad line and I had sink, but yeah, I was like, okay, well, shit, I will have to land somewhere. And I had the option of landing on the mountain and then having to walk maybe, I don't know, half an hour, bit more, and being in a place where I could have taken off again. The place where I could have landed on the mountain was, yeah, I mean, it was a little bit steep, but nothing crazy, full of grass, no obstacles around it. The wind was coming down the mountain at that point, and I'm like, nah, don't complicate yourself. You can land here, but you said you wanted to make it safe. Go land down in the valley. And while I was in direction to the valley, I had several landing options. One, which is the official in that village, which is massive. It's bigger than a football field. But I wanted to take the chairlift, and I'm like, if I land here, it will take me at least half an hour to make it to the chairlift. No, let's land next to the chairlift to save this half an hour. I mean, that's really stupid when you think, when you think about it. But at that moment, I'm like, nah, let's save that half an hour to have more time on the day for hiking and flying and so on. And I told myself, let's land next to the chairlift. You've landed there in the past. And it was a non-event. I did land there like 3 or 4 times. So I convinced myself it's going to be fine. The thing I didn't tell myself is that I landed there always in October, November. No thermal activity, covered sky, no valley wind. So yeah, no problem. That day, it was summer. There was thermals. There was quite some valley wind. And the place where I landed or where I crashed, it's just behind a cliff. And when you look at it on Google Maps, on Google Earth, and you can share the flight if you want for people to check exactly where I crashed. It's clear that it's on the lee of a big obstacle, that the chances of having rotor are really, really, really high. But I don't know why on the air I remember seeing that cliff and telling myself, oh yeah, that's a big cliff. But I sort of convinced myself it was going to be fine. And I was going to the landing spot, and for some reason I don't know, I always check my speed to know where the wind is coming from. But I cannot tell exactly why I didn't do it. Maybe it was because I had landed there already in the past and I was used to land in whatever direction there, or because I had done quite some top landings that summer and I was confident with my landing abilities. But I was doing on the final landing approach, the I don't know how you call it in English, but here they call it a volta, like a U, like aeroplanes do. So you go downwind, then crosswind, and then against the wind. And when I was going crosswind, I just got lift and so much speed. I could feel it because I was really close to the ground. So I had the reference to see, wow, I'm really going fast. And I totally lost control. And then I don't remember the moment of the crash. I just remember a couple seconds before, but I just crashed into 2 cars. And my Vario reading says that I went from about 45 kilometers an hour to 0 at that moment. So I crashed really, really fast. Luckily, I saw it coming just a bit before and I had my legs out. And I think that saved me from a bigger injury, because my gear was perfect. I checked it out afterwards when it was given back to me after I got back from hospital, and the harness had nothing, not even a scratch. I just landed with my legs against the car, and I broke my femur. I remember sending a message to my wife when the rescuers got to me, because until the rescuers got to me, my memory is a bit, it's not very much there. I don't know if I passed out or it's because of the painkillers they gave me. But I remember telling my wife, hey, I've injured my leg. They're taking me to hospital. Not a big deal. I should be fine soon. Thinking, it's just maybe the tibia, something like that. But it was much more than that, and I found about that in hospital. And then I remember again being in the helicopter, completely naked except my underwear, my phone, and my wallet. And just texting my wife, like I was so high with the painkillers. It was difficult to focus and read the screen. And then, yeah, arriving at the ER and getting all the tests, the X-rays, the scans, and yeah, getting given the bad information. I got surgery that same night, and then yeah, I was for a couple of days in hospital until I could go home.
Then what did the recovery look like? Was it a year? Was it how long did it take?
Um, it's difficult to say. So, uh, I'm not a newbie in hospitals or in injuries. So I know what to do to recover fast or to at least be able to be a bit mobile. But in hospital, they told me I would have to stay 1 week there, and then they would send me to some rehab center close to home, like half an hour from home. And I was like, shit, I was feeling horrible because I was leaving my wife at home with a 6 months old kid, and was being like, yeah, useless. I was really being bad, feeling bad, and I was telling the doctor, no, I cannot stay this long in hospital, and I cannot go for a month to a rehab center. Has to be better. And he told me, hey, look, we'll see better, because this was on a Saturday. We'll see better next week on Monday or Tuesday how you are feeling. And I mean, 3 days after, I could manage with one crutch, because since I broke a collarbone, I could not use two crutches, to kind of limp to the bathroom and to more or less be not super dependent. And I convinced them to let me go home. And yeah, then at home, it was not easy for the first, I would say, month. But yeah, after 3 weeks since the accident, I started getting physio at home, and I, if I'm not mistaken, I was not allowed to fully put all the weight of my leg for almost 3 months. But yeah, my first flight is less than 3 months after the accident. And so that was mid-November. And end of November, I started skiing already. So yeah, when the physio was laughing at me for doing that, the doctor was not so happy. But it was okay. I mean, I was taking care. I was not skiing like crazy. Also, the flight, it was simply down flights, no thermaling, with big landing to land, and taking it really, really easy. And to feel fully recovered, I would say that, yeah, 6 months afterwards, I was running without pain. Maybe a bit before, but yeah, after 6 months, I was really feeling good.
That's a good outcome.
Mentally it was a bit tougher. Next summer, the first flights were a bit difficult. Now I would say I feel fine from a mental point of view for flying, but yeah, that took longer.
Do you? So you had? Would you define it as a fear injury?
So the cause of the injury, no, the outcome, or
No, just coming back to it. You know that we've there's been some studies now, and my friend Jessica loves working on it for her thesis for fear injuries. But there's, the any kind of trauma that we experience especially from the mental side, can often be pretty debilitating when you're trying to partake again. And it doesn't have to be in flying; it could be in whatever, driving a car. It could be, it's kind of I think it's pretty tied to a PTSD type scenario where it's just, you start having a lot of irrational fear.
No, I would not say so much for this accident, but I did break my tibial fibula in a ski accident 4 years ago. I still don't understand how it happened exactly. It was with skittering binding, and it did not release, and yeah, I broke it before falling. And that I do have still a fear injury from that one, because I still have not recovered my confidence while skiing.
Yeah.
I used to push a lot, and now whenever there is hard snow and I'm on touring skis, I'm scared.
Yeah. Breaking things hurts. You don't want to break things again. It sucks having surgery. Yeah. Did I miss anything you wanted to add that we didn't talk about?
Yeah, something I would tell to pilots that have gone through a serious accident like I did: get their gear checked by a friend, by an instructor after the accident.
Hmm.
My gear was not damaged in my crash. My harness was destroyed because the rescuers just cut through everything. But it really wasn't. There was no scratches. The wing looked fine. But when I went to ground handle before my first flight, I could see that the lines, especially close to the risers, they were quite stiff. I had
Huh.
no idea what it is. Why was that? A friend of mine told me maybe they were in contact with. I had my
Ah, they
water
burned a
bottle
little
with
bit.
some. No, 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 they didn't burn.
Oh.
I had my water bottle with some electrolytes in, which had
Ah.
spilled around the harness, and a friend of mine told me maybe it was that. Anyway, I sent it to get it checked by Advance. My wing was an Advance, and the guy there told me I've been working here more than 10 years and I've never seen anything like this. I recommend you to change the lower lines, which I did because it's not worth like it was maybe €200
So the
compared to.
salt in the electrolytes, maybe the
I,
salt
I'm
stiffened it
maybe I'm
up,
not
or
sure,
wow.
but I would recommend, because my wing was in the cabinet for like 3 months almost before I saw that. So just get it checked while you're recovering. If it needs to get repaired, get it repaired, and then when you're better, you can straight away go fly. Yeah.
So I mean, and I'm sure you've broken this down a million times, but the reason you reached out with the podcast we did with Nick and Russ, Nick I think mentions he's got a better way to articulate it than I am now, but you'd never be afraid to be inconvenienced. Yeah, that's one of the many people have gotten hurt because of doing exactly what you did, where they don't, this will save me 20 minutes of walking, it'd be better to land at the train station, it'd be better to land on the road, it'd be better to, and we all do it. And then of course in retrospect, especially if you get hurt, you think, yeah, that was ridiculous, could have walked a half an hour, I'm here to have fun. But there, so that's the obvious one to me, but there are, and again, it's not a knock on you. We all do it, but it's just the human. it's the, it's a very human thing. But
Yeah.
what are some of the other things that it sounded like maybe you were in a little bit of a hurry on launch. What are the things you've carried with you that you're trying to avoid now?
Complacency. Just
Yeah.
because you've landed in the same spot doesn't mean it's gonna be always the same.
Mm,
So treat it as if it was a new landing spot each time.
mm,
Get out of the harness early. If I would have stayed in the harness, probably I would have really injured my pelvis or my back, and that could have meant paralysis
mm.
in my lower limbs. So really get out of the harness early. Um, then for hike and fly races. Except for the pros, which will probably not pay that much attention to this episode, but like just go to enjoy it. Just think about it like, yeah, for sure it's nice to keep up with everyone and fly with more people or hike with other people and you can talk meanwhile. But if you cannot follow because you're not as fit as the others or you're not as good as flying as the others, don't push it. Just bring it a little bit down because you're going to be tired. It's going to be probably new terrain. Bring it a little bit down and just enjoy it. And if it's just you have like an hour flying a day and you spend 7 hours hiking, yeah, doesn't matter.
Mm.
What's important is to get back home in one piece. I'm really tailoring this to people like me that don't make a living out of it and don't want to make a rank out of those competitions. Just really go there to enjoy it, and you'll have time to talk at landing with other pilots or at the hut or when the race finishes.
That easier said than done, though, isn't it? I mean, as a
Yeah.
race organizer, I'm really listening in to what you're saying because it's very interesting from that side of things. The first X-Red Rocks we didn't score the adventure category because in our minds we thought, you remove the scoring, you remove the desire to go really hard, and everybody will just have fun. No one will race, but everybody still raced. Didn't matter. And then the feedback is they want to be scored, It's
Mm,
it's
yeah.
again, it's the human condition. And like you
I've
talk
given this
about it with
feedback in
the,
the past. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right, and we need to meditate on that and actually live it. But it's hard to do that. And the other thing, I mean, even with the Vercofly, like you're talking about, it's really geared towards fun. However, you're getting bonus points for an omelet at a, it's still geared towards getting more points, even if you're only in the adventure category, if I understand that correctly. And so, this is no knock on Laurent at all. That's awesome. It's so fun, and it's really geared towards fun. And yet, if I was participating in it, I'd want the most points. I'd still want to get all those points. I'd still want to, I'd
Yeah.
still want. What's great is it sounds like, they're not rewarding top landing. It's you can hit a hut or a waypoint in the air in the adventure category, which is exactly how we do it with the X Red Rock. So the pros have to land, the adventure category can hit it on the ground or in the air. So they're not incentivized to top land, but which is in my mind where hike and fly racing gets really dangerous, is the top landing. So especially when you're tired and all those things. But it's, I fully hear you, and there's nothing I could disagree with whatsoever. But man, it's hard to have a
Yeah.
race and not have it be a race. That's the thing. I mean,
I
or
know.
an event, or whatever
Mm,
you want to call these things. And
yeah.
you have the different categories. We've got three now. We have the academy and the adventure and the pro. And the academy won't be scored. They can fly the same course that the adventure do, and they're getting mentoring and everything else. But I guarantee they're going to race too. The ones because it's just the environment. The environment is such that, yeah, I want to go have fun with my friends, but it'd be nice to beat them too.
Yeah. Yeah. No, no, I understand. Um, I fully understand, and I've been in that position of like wanting to be scored, because the first year I participated, there was no scoring for the adventure category, and I was like, have liked to know how I
Yeah.
did compared to the others.
How do you shape up? How
Yeah.
did you do? And it's
Um.
it's nice to have the points thing. It's
Yeah. So there's something I proposed to Laurent last year. It was not. Mm, it did not happen. I don't know why, but um, I don't know how you organize the X Red Rocks, but in the Vercofly, most of the pilots, or I would say almost all of them, unless they live really nearby, they arrive to Vercon the evening before the race starts. And I proposed him, hey, why let's say that we can make this as an optional activity. Let's have dinner at some pizza place all together, and some pilots can give their experience from other races, and I was willing to give mine of how my accident happened, and maybe that would calm down or put into perspective pilots like me, um, that yeah, they're just there for fun, and it's really not worth it for half an hour like pushing it and maybe having an accident like I had. But I know it's difficult. People will keep on risking, but at least, yeah, making them a bit more aware. And when you give maybe a what's the expression, like a first person experience
yeah,
or first hand experience,
yeah.
um, you can transmit a bit better what happened. It's not simply the race organizer, which is a really good pilot, telling them, be careful, don't risk it here, don't do this, don't do that. It's someone that just had a bad accident, and it's like you the year before. And yeah.
Mm. Good thoughts. Alejandro, thanks for sharing your story. I'm glad you're all recovered. It's fantastic to hear the kids in the background, and I'm
Sorry for
sure
that.
no, I'm sure they're pretty stoked to have their pops. So the glad you made it through it. Glad you're still flying, and hope to see you in a future Vercofly. I've been threatening to come over and do one forever. It's just always tough timing for me. But if this Alps dream that I have comes together and I move the family over there, my goal is just to do all of them: Borns to Fly and Chablais and Verco, and just do a bunch of other. Because my only experience really is the X Alps. So, but thanks for sharing your story, and I'm glad you're all right.
You're welcome. Thank you, Gavin, for having me.
If you find the Cloud-Based Mayhem valuable, you can support it in a lot of different ways. You can give us a rating on iTunes or Stitcher, or however you get your podcast. That goes a long ways and helps spread the word. You can blog about it on your own website or share it on social media. You can talk about it on the way up to launch with your pilot friends. I know a lot of interesting conversations have happened that way. And of course, you can support us financially. This show does take a lot of time, a lot of editing, a lot of storage and music and all kinds of behind the scenes cost. So if you can support us financially, all we've ever asked for is $1 a show. And you can do that through a one-time donation through PayPal, or you can set up a subscription service that charges you for each show that comes out. We put a new show out every 2 weeks. So for example, if you did $1 a show and every 2 weeks, it'd be about $25 a year. So way cheaper than a magazine subscription. And it makes all of this possible. I do not want to fund this show with advertising or sponsors. We get asked about that pretty frequently, but for a whole bunch of different reasons, which I've said many times on the show, I don't want to do that. I don't like having that stuff at the front of the show. And I also want you to know that these are authentic conversations with real people, and these are just our opinions, but our opinions are not being skewed by sponsors or advertising dollars. I think that's a pretty toxic business model. So I hope you dig that. You can support us. If you go to cloudbasedmayhem.com, you can find the places to support. You can do it through patreon.com/cloudbasedmayhem. If you want a recurring subscription, you can also do that directly through the website. We've tried to make it really easy, and that will give you access to all the bonus material, little video casts that we do and extra little nuggets that we find in conversations that don't make it into the main show, but we feel like you should hear. We don't put any of that behind a paywall. If you can't afford to support us, then just let me know and I'll set you up with an account. Of course, that'll be lifetime, and hopefully you're being in a position someday to be able to support us. But you'll find all that on the website. All of you who have supported us or even joined our newsletter or bought Cloud-Based Mayhem merchandise, t-shirts or hats or anything, you should be all set up. You should have an account and you should be able to access all that bonus material now. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate your support, and we'll see you on the next show. Thank you.